Hey there, everyone. It's Mike, formerly known as Image. I used to post stuff on this channel about StarCraft or chess, or even some unlisted stuff about Street Fighter or League of Legends. And I haven't in a long time. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Moving halfway across the world, starting a career, getting distracted by work, just generally having less time for content creation, approaching burnout at some points, and just not having the bandwidth to do anything content, and also just feeling like I've had very little in terms of content that provides something that has some greater insight or understanding beyond maybe like analyzing something in a game. And then yesterday I played this game of chess on chess.com. It was a 1-minute bullet game, and while the prevailing sentiment in the chess community is analyzing bullet games is a stupid waste of time, the focus of this video isn't really analysis of the game as such. Like, there are interesting things that happened in the game, and there were cool like calculations and sequences, and I'll talk a little bit about those. But it's really more about broad strokes stuff about my development as a chess player that is something that other adult improvers at chess might be able to like find useful or apply. And that's what I wanted to sort of focus on in talking about this game. So there are a few things that I want to raise that I'll talk about when we actually reach the suitable point in the game. So let's actually start looking at the game. And like I said, the analysis is going to be superficial with the exception of a couple of moves. So like if you're looking for depth on opening lines, like this is not the right video for that. But I will point you to a very relevant one later in the game because it's where I got one of the middle game ideas from. So let's take a look at the game. This is me. I'm playing white. My bullet rating is 1344. Which ain't great. My bullets in rapid are hovering around 1700, like 1650, 1700. The fact is I'm a slower player. I tend to benefit from having a bit more time. So nonetheless, let's get into it. We play a Sicilian defense. I used to dabble with a lot of anti-Sicilians, but these days I'm embracing the open Sicilian, especially against d6. So we get into a Najdorf. And here, I've been trying out some different approaches here. I've been trying the Sozin variation with bishop c4, the mainline Richter-Rauser attack with bishop g5. And this game, I do a suboptimal hybrid of both. I start with the mainline and then do this. And this is a viable move. I think f4 is a little bit more normal there. It's not the best move in the position, but it's playable. And then after bishop e7, which is relatively normal, here I play f4. And I think this is also like kind of pushing it and overextending and suboptimal. But anyway, the detailed nuances of the opening are a little bit less important until we get a little further into the game where we're more decidedly into the middle game. So my opponent castles, I play queen to f3. After queen c7, I need to move this bishop out of the way, so I fall back to b3 and b5. And what follows here was pretty interesting. So I have 45 seconds left on the clock, and here I spent 15 seconds calculating what happens after this move and whether this double attack on the knight and the rook works. And in order to calculate that, I also had to look at what I thought was the reasonable defensive resource in the position, which was bishop b7 hitting the queen. So like what happens then? So the double attack doesn't work in the sense that I can't take the piece for free and I'm not attacking the rook anymore. But what it does allow is the sequence that happened in the game. And so like I did calculate this to a certain extent. And I did play e5, and my opponent did play bishop b7. And what follows is this forcing sequence where I sacrifice the queen for the 3 minor pieces. And just worth noting, I could have also taken with this knight, but I wanted this open line to the king. And that's why I did the thing that I did. So we get this position. And so looking at this position, I've sacked the queen for 3 pieces. What's the compensation is I have this open line. I have the minor pieces that can transfer over to the king side and start an attack. In some positions, I may have some ideas of sacrificing on e6. And it's a complex position. There's chess to be played. But I felt that I was coming out of that at least okay. And in the absence of some better idea, coming up with a practical plan, even if it was as bonkers as that one, felt like better than just making slow improving moves. So that's what I did. And my opponent pushed his pawn to b4. I felt that this was maybe a little bit inaccurate because I wanted to put my knight onto e4 anyway. Some of the stuff I was eyeing was the possibility of actually sacrificing this knight on f6 to open the g file and try to get a mating attack, which I then did. Here, after my opponent accepted the sacrifice, which I don't think there was anything better for him to do, I took on f6. Objectively, the engine suggests that taking on h6 is better, but what I liked about this move is that it established this checkmate threat, which my opponent missed in greeting for that knight, and I delivered this checkmate. So, that's cool. I sacrificed a queen for 3 pieces, sacked a couple of knights, got a mating attack, and won this game. And that's cool. Then I went back and reviewed some stuff after the game, and I learned a couple of really interesting things. So thing number 1 was the sacrifice idea in itself. So in some positions where you have this e5 move and where the sort of book continuation theoretical best line is going in for this kind of sacrifice is an idea in the Najdorf that I got from a video by Andras Toth, chess coach Andras on YouTube, called Why You Should Play the Sicilian, and I'll link that. So I had seen this video around the time it came out in March of last year, and then I totally forgot about it for a while. And then the idea resurfaced in this game. So I got to use this idea, whether I independently came up with it over the board or I subconsciously remembered it, I don't know which it is. But having the familiarity with an idea or a pattern will give you the opportunity to realize that pattern in a similar position in your own games. So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I'll link that video, and I recommend you give it a watch. So that was interesting thing number 1. Interesting thing number 2, when it comes to my development as a chess player, was also doing the bit of calculation around this queen sacrifice and concluding that after e5, bishop b7, I can go in for that and it's okay. And the engine, when I looked at the game back with an engine, agreed in the limited way that yes, bishop b7, I can respond to it that way, but the move e5 was not accurate, and it's not because of bishop b7, which is not the best move. But black can actually just ignore my threat, and even if I take here, Black actually comes out ahead like this. So the idea was good, and this defensive idea of just ignoring the threat entirely is not often how people will think in a 1-minute bullet game. And going in for this was also a practical decision. I made a choice that was theoretically and objectively incorrect. E5 doesn't work because of this d takes e5 idea, not because of bishop b7. So e5 was objectively wrong, but it was practically right in the sense that I made the read on what my opponent was going to do as a defensive resource, and I calculated far enough to know that I was okay if that's what they did. The read played out the way that I thought it would, and then I was left with a position that I thought was playable and a reasonable plan. So, sometimes people talk about practical chances in chess, but it's not always easy to grasp. What does it actually mean to have, to make a practical decision rather than an objectively good decision in a position? And I think this is a kind of good example where even though the move is objectively wrong, the reason that the move is objectively wrong is hard to spot in the kind of time control that we were playing. So playing practically and then kind of fearlessly committing to the read that you make, those are the reasons why I thought that this was a game that I played particularly well, rather than that the moves were necessarily objectively sound. This is something that I find happens a lot when it comes to engine analysis, where you think you've done something neat and the engine pours a glass of cold water over you and tells you you're an idiot and you shouldn't have done that. If you look at the game objectively, then maybe that's true, but chess is a game played between humans when you're playing it, and it's not the engine doing the play for you. There were a number of factors here, I had less time, I needed to generate a clear-cut plan, that even though the move was inaccurate, it gave me the best chances of winning the game. So things that I think are neat takeaways from this game are observe, watch games and learn these kind of patterns in the opening, like this queen sacrifice idea. You can bet, now that I've reviewed the lines, that I'm going to adjust my opening to get into more of the kinds of positions where this is sound, and then try to use it in my games and hopefully rack up some more really neat wins. And then also to not get so hung up on the engine, because another thing that's really great about this game I found was it felt really good to play. The aesthetics of the moves and the positions were something that I found beautiful. There was a little bit of that sort of swashbuckling chess, playing with conviction, and not buckling in the fear of my 900 points rated higher opponent. All of that's also some of why people play chess, and it's easy to get fixated on ratings and opening lines and playing objectively the best, but finding moments to experience and appreciate the beauty of the game is also wonderful. Chess is so rich. Thanks for watching.